Trevor Timm of The Guardian wrote an outstanding piece about how it's perplexing that everyone in the country seems to love Bernie Sanders, with the exception of the Democratic Party establishment, who actually stands to gain a lot by embracing his message. So Timm states, if you look at the numbers, Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in America, and it's not even close. Yet, bizarrely, the Democratic Party, out of power across the country and increasingly irrelevant, still refuses to embrace him and his message. It's increasingly clear that they do so at their own peril. A new Fox News poll out this week shows Sanders has a 28 net favorability rating among the U.S. population, dwarfing all other elected politicians on both ends of the political spectrum, and he's even more popular among the vaunted independents, where he is at a mind-boggling plus 41. One would think with numbers like that, Democratic politicians would be falling all over themselves to be associated with Sanders, especially considering the party as a whole is more unpopular than the Republicans and even Donald Trump right now. Yet, instead of embracing his message, the establishment wing of the party continues to resist him at almost every turn, and they seem insistent that they don't have to change their ways to gain back the support of huge swaths of the country. They've steadfastly refused to take giant corporations head-on in the public sphere, and wouldn't even return to an Obama-era rule that banned lobbyist money from funding the DNC that was rescinded last year. And despite the broad popularity of the government guaranteeing healthcare for everyone, they still have not made any push for a Medicare for All plan that Sanders has long called for as a rebuttal to Republicans' attempt to dismantle Obamacare. Democrats seem more than happy to put all of the blame of the 2016 election on a combination of Russia and James Comey, and have engaged in almost zero introspection on the root causes of the larger reality. They are also out of power in not just the presidency, but both also houses of Congress, governorships, and state houses across the country as well. In the long term, change may be coming for Democrats, whether they like it or not. Sanders loyalists are quietly attempting to take over many local Democratic Party positions around the country. While Ellison lost the race for the DNC chair, it was incredibly close. Closer than Sanders came to beating Clinton, and Sanders supporters are already organizing primary challenges to incumbent Democrats who aren't sufficiently opposing Trump. One thing's for sure, Democrats who refuse to change do so at their own peril. So I thought that this was a phenomenal piece. It was written so well, and it really articulates all of the frustrations that progressives have tried to communicate to Democrats, but they just continue to plug their ears and ignore us. So one point he makes here is that how Democrats think that they don't have to change anything. They just have to continue doing the same exact thing to win. But that's not the way this is going to work in the short term. I mean, certainly long term. What they're trying to do is wait it out. They are just going to continue to be just a little bit less shitty than Republicans, because they think that people will get so sick of Donald Trump that they can put forth any corporatist Democrat and we'll all be falling over ourselves to vote for that individual. But, I mean, that's not going to happen for a long time. What you're setting us up for is 8 years of Donald Trump, or 12 years potentially of a Republican White House, and that is something that is not acceptable. You have to embrace change. And I mean, to this point here that he's making, we saw this with Nancy Pelosi, who doesn't want to change, who, rather than saying that, Bernie Sanders is the new de facto leader of the party, it's really Obama and Clinton who are the leaders. They are so resistant to change that it's embarrassing. I mean, as focus group driven as the Democratic Party is, and for all the consultants that they hire, you would think that they would want to embrace Bernie Sanders. And like you said, they would be falling all over themselves to be like Bernie Sanders and associate themselves with Bernie Sanders. But they don't like Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders threatens the status quo. He would be someone who would intimidate the donor class. And the donors are what's funding the Democratic Party. And I love how he talks about, they've had almost zero introspection, because this is so true. I mean, they blame everyone but themselves for losing the 2016 election, but they've been losing. They've lost basically every single election. In 2010, they lost the House. In 2014, they lost the Senate. In 2016, they lost the White House. They keep losing. They are losers. Yet, they're the ones who are right. We're the ones who are wrong. Anyone who tries to challenge these corporatist Democrats, they're the ones who are wrong. You should be attacking Donald Trump. Focus your energy on Trump. But I mean, they fail to realize that if Democrats actually got their act together, the Republicans would not be in control. Donald Trump would not be the president. If Bernie Sanders was the party's nominee, if they didn't try to rig it against Bernie Sanders, then we would be in a much different situation right now. And if someone as popular as Bernie Sanders ran to be president, I think it's the case that they probably would have kept the Senate, because if you have a really popular politician at the top of the ticket, then that influences the lower level races as well. But I mean, they don't care about this. They got someone who was already politically damaged and flawed, like Hillary Clinton, who was being investigated by the FBI at the time she announced her campaign. And they said, this is the person, she's more electable. If we go with Bernie Sanders, we'll lose, it's a risk. They didn't listen to anything we had to say. They didn't realize that there was an anti-establishment wave in the country, and we were just sick of the status quo because you establishment idiots keep messing up the country for us. So, I mean, I think that Timm is correct here when he states that, by refusing to embrace Bernie Sanders, they're really hurting themselves more than anyone. He's 100% right, because the Democratic Party, I'm starting to think that maybe they're not so incompetent as they are just evil and not wanting to change because they know what they're doing. They're not dumb. I think they know what they're doing. I don't know if that's true with all of them, because some of them certainly are pretty dumb. But I think this is something that's much more nefarious. If you want an answer as to why something is the way it is and it seems weird, you just got to follow the money. And with Democrats, it's all about money. They don't want to turn off the money faucet that's raining down on them. They want to continue to keep this cash train flowing. But by doing so, they will not be politically relevant for a while.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.